All right.
So everyone, as you're coming in, I just want you to look and fill out your poll that you have. There's just 2 questions. And also, if you could, Elaina asked that in the chat box, put in why you signed up for this webinar. I'd love to have that information.
I'll type it in too.
Okay.
So people can see the question.
You're going to put that in the question and answer in the chat box.
I'll put this one in the chat box.
Okay. Okay, we'll let the poll go. It's live. We'll let it go on for a few minutes while people are coming in. Oh, wait, 1 more minute. We'll start. We'll let the poll go for a few more. So I just want to welcome everyone. Thank you for sitting in front of your computer on this amazing day. But no, there's many more to come. This is just a taste of what we're going to have for spring. So today we're doing stress-free livestock handling with Elaina Enzien. And I don't know her married name, even though she's one. What is it?
It's still Elaina Enzien.
Okay. So we're so happy to have Elaina as one of our board members at Granite State Graziers. And she is a pro at this. This is what she does. So I'm going to hand it off to her. And just for people who are just coming on, make sure you fill out the poll. And Elaina asked in the chat box if you could put in why you signed up for her webinar. That would be great. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. So before I start my presentation, I just want to say, hi, everyone. I'm Elaina Enzien. Like Michelle said, I am a board member of the Granite State Graziers, and my other hat is a UNH Cooperative Extension field specialist. I work with livestock producers around the state, and low stress livestock handling is something that I'm not necessarily, I didn't do any schooling in, but it's something I grew up doing on the farm that I worked at throughout my childhood and live at currently. So it's really fun to play around with. So I'm excited to talk about it with you guys, and definitely put into the chat, why did you decide to sign up? Because this is something I think we've heard a lot about, and you know, there's a lot of research and articles about it, but I don't necessarily hear it talked about much in some of my networks with farmers here. So something that I'm hoping more folks can get into. So I'm going to share my screen, and bear with me. I might have to do a little shuffling. All right. One second. For some reason now my presentation doesn't want to play, so let's try again. All right, how is that for folks? If somebody can just unmute quickly and let me know if you're seeing the right screen.
Elaina, it looks great.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear. Okay, so going with the flow, low stress livestock handling. So my goal today for you guys is to define low stress handling, make you aware of how to handle animals in this way, and really just show you the value of this type of management and how it can improve these three things that I have listed here on the screen. Now, I haven't had a chance to read the chat yet, but if some of you are out there and you use low stress livestock handling or are familiar with it, I would love for you to share your experiences, add in any tips that you have. That would be fabulous. And I can't see anybody, and I can't even see my own face. So I'm here. If anybody has any trouble seeing or hearing, just Michelle, I'm sure will let me know.
So Elaina, actually, yeah, Eva said that she can't hear anything. Is there anyone else that is not hearing? Well, I guess that would preclude them from hearing me right now. It seems just that it is on one person. So let me try to work with her.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sounds good. All right. Well, hopefully we can get that worked out. So as livestock owners, like I said, we do have the ability to improve these three things just in how we handle our animals. As many of us probably know or have experienced, handling any animal can be frustrating at times, especially if the animal isn't used to being handled frequently by people. Or, it could really just be one of those days. Maybe you have a heifer in heat that is just being a little crazy. But low stress livestock handling can help you, make things be more efficient, decrease your personal stress, and improve quality of life overall. And it's really just it's a way to work smarter and not harder. We really just have to take the time to step back and understand the animal and adjust our approach to better speak their language, because we speak completely different languages. You guys may have heard of Temple Grandin. She's really wonderful and has been revolutionary for the livestock industry in terms of decreasing stress and improving quality. And she describes how animals see in pictures and they communicate through body language. So it's really important for us to understand that as animal handlers. And in turn, putting these practices into place, it's a really simple way to improve your economic profit. And I'll talk a little bit about why that might be. All right. Sometimes the slide takes a minute to advance. There we go. All right, so first I want to define low stress livestock handling. This is obviously the method I'm going to focus on. I'm not saying it's the only way to handle your animals, and I'm certainly not saying like this is how you really should be doing things. I'm just going to explain that the research and experience within the industry shows it's really a great way to handle animals, and it is to your benefit and to the benefit of your business to do it this way. And low stress livestock handling is simply handling livestock based on their natural behavior. So thinking about it as a livestock centered way of handling versus human centered. So it's really about finding that harmony between livestock and the human, and understanding why do animals act the way they do. So that we can influence them to get them to do something we want, not force them to do what we want. So this really, in a lot of ways, involves a shift in the attitude on our part, because, we often assume like we're smarter, therefore we're right, and the animal might just be numb and, come on, like just do what I'm telling you to do. But oftentimes the animal just doesn't understand what we're trying to say. So we just have to put ourselves in their position, and really think about it from a livestock centered way. So like I mentioned, Temple Grandin is someone you can look into for more of this stuff. Whit Hibbard is another one. Pate, I have a little video on him later in this presentation, and he does stuff with beef quality assurance. And then Bud Williams, if you haven't heard of him, he's kind of the father of low stress livestock handling. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but his family does have a whole program dedicated to his work in handling livestock across, he did a lot of work across the country with this stuff. So we'll talk a little bit more about his bud box design as well. And certainly if there's questions throughout or comments, Michelle, feel free to interrupt me. Okay. So really quickly, gonna go over some of the benefits and the results. So I said it can improve the economics of your business, and this is how and why. Some of the research out there that says this is why low stress livestock handling is really great. Oh, great. I can see the polls right now, and it looks like most of you do currently practice low stress livestock handling, which is very cool. So definitely please chime in, because I love hearing experiences from others, and definitely love being challenged too. So in terms of economic and kind of performance statistics, I'm not going to get into statistics, but so it can improve performance. So there are studies that show an improved weight gain on using low stress livestock handling. It can improve conception rates. So stress, when animals are stressed, as many of us know, the resulting hormonal response can disrupt ovulation, which can decrease conception rates. And this research that I'm talking about in particular was done in dairy cows. And I'm sure there's a lot more out there as well. But this study showed that when negative human animal interaction was exhibited, there was a 19% lower viability rate of embryos in these cattle. So that's pretty significant, especially when your business really depends on conception and the future of your herds. And again, low stress livestock handling, it goes for any animal: cows, sheep, goats, pigs, and it doesn't matter if you have 100 head or 5 head, or even a couple. It's definitely applicable to all sizes and all operations. So milk yield is another thing. Again, we all know that when animals are stressed, production decreases, especially when it comes to milk. And then just like us, when we're stressed out and, anxious, we tend to get our immune system decreases its function, and we tend to get sick. So similarly in livestock, when they are stressed, you're going to see more disease. And carcass quality is another one that we see an improvement in. So the National Beef Quality Audit calculated that 5% of the beef carcasses in the US are dark cutters, and this is due to stress of improper handling. So that's a lot of, that's a huge impact. And they reported that the dark cutting beef caused by pre-harvest stress cost about $6 per animal harvested. So it's significant stuff for sure. And so we can see better efficiency just because things are going to move a little bit smoother. Well, when you get started with it, it might move a little bit slower at first if you're learning things and may seem counterintuitive. It really will be more efficient in the end. And of course, safety is a huge thing, especially if you're dealing with larger animals or bulls or whatever you have, rams, making sure you're handling them in a way that isn't going to stress them out, and, letting them know that you're here to handle them and get a job done and are communicating clearly can definitely help decrease any injury as well. And overall, obviously, welfare and quality of life, less stress is better. Okay. So before I get into the how-tos of low stress handling, we have to understand animal behavior and what their needs are. So why do livestock act the way they do? We have to understand this in order to better utilize their natural behavior and, again, get them to do what we want versus forcing them to do something. So first thing, anatomy. Livestock are prey animals. Their eyes are shaped differently and on the sides of their head. So this is going to affect the way they see. So they can see obviously much more around them, but directly in front of them is going to be a little bit difficult, and directly behind them, they have limited vision and can't see you there. So, and they also have some limited vertical vision. So if you ever see an animal put their head down, they might be just trying to see what's below their line of vision. So knowing that they can't see directly behind them and right in front of them, and some of their vertical vision is impeded. If they, hear something behind them, or are disturbed by something, livestock are going to tend to turn and face that disturbance to see it better versus moving away from it. Now, they may scoot away from it at one point, but eventually, they're going to circle around, turn back, and look at what was that disturbance. And finally, they have excellent hearing. All livestock do. So loud noises tend to be really disturbing. So this is just to stress the importance of keeping a quiet environment. Loud noises, yelling and clapping can even be more stressful than a hot shot. So, and this is really because they have difficulty pinpointing where that noise came from. So if they don't know where it's coming from, then they don't know where to move away from the pressure. All right, so in terms of instinct, obviously livestock are usually herd animals. They find safety in numbers, and an animal that gets singled out or alone becomes pretty distressed. Now, sometimes we do need to single out an animal by itself, but they're, again, handling them in this way can help decrease that stress in when they do have to be separated out. So they also like to follow one another, so you can use that to your advantage. And they really appreciate moving into areas that are well lit versus dark. Again, if they're coming in from a bright spot to a dark spot, just like us, it's going to be hard to see what's at the end. And so that can create some unsureness. So just making sure, if you have the ability to, well-lit spaces, if your handling facility is inside, make sure you have some good lighting. However, if you're moving in the pasture, then that's pretty easy. It's usually nice and light there. And then some other things to think about, they definitely prefer moving uphill versus downhill. So uphill is just like going up a ramp versus down a ramp. It's just going to be a little bit easier for them and give them more confidence in their footing. And then finally, animals really instinctually like to go back to where they came from. And usually that's because it's the last place they found safety, security. There might have been food there. They probably were left alone for a while, and that was the last place they were, that nobody was bugging them. So again, using this to their advantage, to your advantage, sending animals in a direction that makes them think they're going back to where they came from can be a way to use that instinct. And another thing about their instinct too, animals will always want to go by you, and they want to go around us. So like I said before, if you're coming up behind an animal, or they get startled behind, or you startle them from the side, they're going to want to go by you, get away from that threat, and then turn around to look and see and sort of assess what that threat is. And finally, experience. They can obviously learn very quickly that if you feed with a tractor or gator or whatever you use for feeding, they'll know that the next fence line over, that's where the food is, and that you're the one that's going to bring them there. They can quickly learn just from experience what is good and what is bad. They can learn that, certain people are not going to provide them with a good experience. and can lead to distress. So they remember these bad experiences. And so it's up to us to make sure that we're handling them in a consistent way, in as a positive way as possible, and always try to end on a good note when we're handling our livestock. Okay. So here are some of the mechanics of what goes into this. And again, many of you practice this already, so this will be kind of review. But there is a lot that can go into it. And the biggest thing to remember really is to just be patient. And if you do ever feel like, your temper is rising, just make sure you stop and take a break and come back to it later if you have the time. And in terms of time, you want to make sure you have plenty of time to handle these animals. If you're loading a trailer, make sure that you're doing it well in advance from when you have to leave your property. Sometimes it doesn't always work out perfectly, but if you can at least practice with some of this stuff, loading the trailer, running them through a chute, it's just going to work in your favor for when you actually have to utilize these things. So yeah, patience is really, really key. And we might take low stress livestock handling as, we think we have to go really slow and make sure everything is moving slow and we're walking really quietly around them. I want to just say slow stress does not mean low stress, or going slow can actually increase the stress if they can feel like they're being stalked. So this type of handling, it can move fast. It really can. And that's where when you get really handy with it, it can be very efficient. And sometimes you do have to kick up the pressure and inflict a little bit more direction. So it's not always about tiptoeing around our animals and being like, oh, I don't want to stress you out, because that can be equally as stressful. So yeah, it's just our job to think for them, and they're not going to know what's right or wrong. They only know what feels good or what feels bad. So first thing to think about, hopefully you can see my pointer. If not, we're looking at the photo with the flight zone. So to get started, the flight zone and point of balance are the two things you're going to use to manipulate where and how your animal moves. So this is basically their personal space. So if someone scary gets too close to me, I'm going to move the other direction. So once I move away, that person doesn't follow me, I no longer feel stressed and all is good. So same situation, same kind of theory with our livestock. They have this bubble, and as soon as you step into that flight zone, you're going to manipulate their movement and they are likely going to move away from you. So that's how we manipulate the movement. You step into that flight zone, they start moving. Now it's equally important to learn how to back up when we're handling livestock. So as we step into the flight zone, they do what we want them to do. It's often our intuition is to keep going, keep staying in that flight zone until they get to where we need them to go. But it's really important that throughout your handling process that you back up and get out of that flight zone, because you're continuously hanging out in this flight zone. That's going to start to stress them out. They're not going to know where is the release of that pressure. And that's really what it's all about, is feeling the release of pressure, to have them help themselves figure out where they're supposed to go. So that is kind of the concept of the flight zone, stepping in and out of there. And that's, again, just to manipulate the movement. Point of balance, on the other hand, is going to determine your direction. So as a general rule, as you apply pressure to the front of their shoulder, so that point of balance is usually at an animal's wither. So if you start to apply pressure in the flight zone at their shoulder, that will either make them back up or turn around or turn to the right or left. If you're going to put pressure behind that shoulder towards their hip, that'll likely direct them forward. And depending on your angle, you can direct them forward a little to the right, direct them forward a little to the left. So always you're going to be aiming your body towards their eyes, to their ribs, maybe the hip, or that shoulder. So those are kind of your points on the point of balance when you're playing around with this. So using those two together, that's how you're going to create that movement, create that direction. And of course, always remembering once they get going to release that pressure so they know and can feel good about where they're going. Some other things to think about is you want to work cattle from the sides and front as much as possible. And really more so from the sides is where you're going to be working. Because remember here, this shaded area is their blind spot and they can't see you. And so that animal's natural behavior, if you're driving them from behind, they're going to circle around and look at you. And you're going to be like, why aren't they moving forward? I told you to move forward. It's because they can't see you. So their natural instinct is going to be to turn around and look at you. So when you do want to drive them, whether individually or as a herd, it doesn't matter. You're going to use this zigzag motion. So walking straight one direction, straight the other direction. And once they start moving, you can start advancing your zigzag. But really at no point in time are you going to be driving straight behind this herd. You're always going to be walking back and forth. And to get that movement started, you might even just have to stand there and shift your weight back and forth. And it seems kind of funny when you're doing it, but you know, once they get going, that movement feels good and they're all going to be attracted to that kind of movement. So zigzagging back and forth and in straight lines. We always want to work our livestock in straight lines because again, they're prey animals. So predators typically circle their prey before they kill them. So that can promote some stress in an animal. So keeping your lines straight is really going to promote sureness in those livestock about where they're going and really develops a form of trust that they know you're going to take care of them and that they can trust that your direction is going to put them in an okay spot. So another tip for if you're doing any kind of shoot work or loading them into a trailer, one tip using the idea that animals like to go by you, say oftentimes they get caught up in the chute before getting into the headache. So if you find that's happening, what you can do is just walk a straight line past them from head to tail down that chute, and that will send them forward. So when you come back around, you can do it again. And this is something you can do repeatedly until you're getting them through that head gate. So that was a really neat trick that I learned at a low stress clinic down in Virginia, and it works super, super well. Okay, so here I have a little video to kind of demonstrate some of that stuff I was talking about. And I want to make sure that, we get some break from just listening to me gab all the time. So first I want to make sure we're good for video sharing. And hopefully this works out for you guys. And this is Kurt Pate. He does a lot of low stress handling classes for beef quality assurance, and he's based out west, and here he's herding a bunch of bulls, which I don't know how many herds of bulls we have here in New Hampshire, and you guys I know are probably from all over the place, but it's pretty cool to see him work these bulls. So here we go. It's about a 6-minute video.
So when we're dealing and talking about effective stockmanship, if you break it down to its component parts, you're really working with the animal's mind, their brain. And the way to communicate with the brain, the best way is through vision. We can use touch and we can use sound, But out in the open in a big area, the way the bull sees us and how we are approaching his pressure zone is the most important point. So when I want to communicate with these bulls, the worst thing I can do is walk around behind them, because that'll cause their vision or their eyes to turn and look at me. And that'll put them in the exact opposite direction I want them to go. So as I walk to move them out of this pen, I'm going to be real conscious of where their eye looks at me and where it points their nose. And I want to point their nose right out this gate. So as I approach here, I step in and I approach these bulls in a way that causes them to look right towards the gate. So I have to get down behind this guy a little bit more. And as he comes across, I'm going to step over here. And as we prepare them, I'll get them all prepared to go, trying to position myself where they're all pointed towards the gate, and I will send them right through the gate. So I'm way up on their side, and now I have control of their flows going through the gate. I can tell each one of them to go through there nice and orderly. I can step back and take the pressure off. I can step in towards his tail to bring his nose across. This last one, I can walk right by him. As soon as I get by the balance point, I can turn in, step in behind, and flow him right through the gate. What I had was complete control of these bulls' mind because I was in the right position. If you get around behind them, you have no control of their mind or their speed. So what we're dealing with when we're moving livestock is applying pressure. And if you apply the pressure properly, animals seem to like it and respond well to it. And if you apply the pressure wrong, they learn to fight it or hide from it. Bulls don't take pressure good. They like good pressure, but they don't like bad pressure. So as I move these bulls, it's real important to pressure them in the proper way so they keep getting better, or you'll have lots of trouble with your bulls. And your bulls are really your report card on how good your cattle handling is. So at first I look at the big picture here, I see all of them. And the first thing I want to do is just start lining them out, getting them, not putting too much pressure on, but getting them to change their mind and point them all in the same direction. Once they all get head and tailed the same direction, now they kind of want to go. And all I have to do is step in, pressure him, straighten his nose, step back, ask this one to come forward, step forward. All I'm doing is applying pressure to each bull that needs it at the right time. So I'll send him on, send him on. Now right here, I've got to start widening out to point them towards my gate. As I widen out, I'll turn their heads towards the gate. I'll put some pressure right on this bull here. I'll step up to him. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the pressure on him all the way through. He's going to push the other bull through the gate. Now this positions me here to apply pressure, take it off. I'll open the gap for this bull. He's not going, so I'll move in, apply pressure in the right spot, send him. Now I'm going to send him pretty hard so he pushes his way through the gate. This little guy right here, I'm going to walk right directly by him. As soon as he gets by the breaking point, I'll just go with him. What this does, I'm out to the side, he can see me, and it causes him to push his way through that gate where the other bull's pressure can't push him back. So one of the real stressful tasks that we do with any animals in the beef industry is sorting. That can put more pressure on than anything. But with bulls, it's not only the pressure of the handler, but the pressure of the other bulls too. So I like to sort bulls in a bigger pen. I actually like to sort all cattle in a bigger pen, but this will be a good way to show that these bulls can be sorted in a bigger area where they don't feel so confined, and it'll just work out safer and better for everybody. So the first thing I want to do is, again, get them pointed towards the gate. So I position myself to get things lined out. And as soon as we get them positioned, now I can decide I can let him go because they know how to go by me. I'll keep this calf here, I'll keep this younger one. Send him to the back. I'd like to keep this first one here, so I'll bring him right on around, come to the back. So if I've got them under control, I can position them and put them anywhere I want. I'll send this guy by or back to the back, and I'll just keep positioning myself to where I can put myself in the proper place to get this older bull to come on by. I'll just walk with him. As I stop here, all the bulls are looking at me and wanting to go. This way they stay good at getting sorted or worked, but I got my sort done real low stress.
Don't forget, the Beef Quality Assurance Program provides.
All right. So yeah, I hope that video was helpful. And what I really like about that, actually, before I get back into my presentation, I only actually have a couple slides left. So if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box now or the Q&A box so that we can just get rolling on those right away.
So Emma, Elaina, sorry, there's a question in chat and question in the Q&A right now. So when you're ready, you can check them.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I guess I'll just finish up my presentation and then we can dig right into Q&A and comments and all that fun stuff. So what I did really like about that video is it was a great demonstration of how it doesn't have to go slow. You know, when things do speed up, it does add another challenge or another level of a challenge, but you know, you don't have to be creeping around them to make this low stress. So I really like that. And another thing, so I'm sure a lot of you, since you know this is a grazing conference or a grazing series, many of you are going to be moving cattle from paddock to paddock, or sheep from paddock to paddock, or pigs, or whatever, goats. So a lot of the times, you know, maybe you're doing this by yourself with another person, but likely maybe you're feeding them through a gate, or maybe you just open a whole line and they all go through. No matter your situation, say you do have a gate in a field that you're trying to move animals through, a great technique, and he kind of did this, but he didn't mention it, was riding a T to that gate or walking a T to that gate. So the bottom of the T is going to be the gate, and that top of the T is going to be the line you walk, zigzagging back and forth across behind the herd. So if that makes sense, I wish I could like draw and sort of show you guys visually. I suppose I could annotate, but maybe I don't want to get into that today. Well, things are going smooth, so I'll leave it alone. But if that makes sense, you know, think about walking and pushing your herd as a T to the gate. So that, you know, you have a clear visual of where you want them to go and that you can walk that particular line, so that they can see that hole and go through it. Because a lot of the times too, why livestock, you know, you open a gate and then they don't want to go through it. One, it's because it's a new place. And like I said before, they like to go back where they came from. Again, once they get the hang of things, they learn. If you're moving them every day, they know that next paddock is going to be there for them. But sometimes, you know, loading them on a trailer or bringing them in to do vaccinations, whatever your method is or how you do things, you know, they oftentimes, when you bring them to a gate, they might not go right through it. And sometimes that's because it's a new territory, but also sometimes they may not know that is a gate. They may not be able to see that is an open space, especially if it's usually closed. So another good tip to try is, you know, walk out in front there and see if you can open that gate so that your animals can see that gate open. They know it's a hole, and so there's an opportunity for them to go somewhere else. And sometimes they do like to go explore. All right, so a little bit about facilities. You know, I'm a big proponent of actually having some kind of facility. It just makes things a lot easier, a lot safer. I've seen some great sheep handling facilities, and yes, it's an investment, but it's an investment that's worthwhile, especially if you are, say, buying in livestock or even, doing preg checks, whatever it might be. You guys are likely handling your animals more than you think. So having some kind of facility set up is helpful. Now, it doesn't have to be like a 5-star, the most expensive primo facility on the market. You can make do with a lot. But I think, the best investment that I've seen folks make, especially for cattle, is getting some kind of head gate, and setting up a chute system with that. So whatever it is, it's great to have good working facilities, and yes, they're an investment. Maybe you can, go in on one with another partner farm and you guys can share a mobile facility, or, head gate setup, but they're really wonderful. And I'd love to hear about what you guys have for facilities and where you're sourcing those, and that kind of stuff. But here, I'm just going to talk about the bud box, which I mentioned earlier, named after Bud Williams. And so it's a way, again, to use the animal's natural instinct to send them down a chute. Now, a lot of times we are sending cattle down a chute. The farm where I live now, we probably send them through the chute several times in the season. They just have cattle during the summer, but we're using that chute system quite a bit. So having the bud box is super handy just to teach them how to run through that chute. So it's pretty counterintuitive in some ways, but remembering that animals, again, like to circle around you. Again, I hope you guys can see my mouse. I'm looking at the picture on the left-hand side that says return or bud box. So here's your chute and your head gate. And actually this image down here of in the bottom right of the cattle going down the chute to the head gate, off to the right, not in the picture, that is a bud box. And someone is usually standing or on horseback by this telephone post on the right-hand side. And so if you can look at the image over here, someone would be standing here and working this fence line of the bud box. So you're going to work this line back and forth, and maybe you'll have 4 or 5 animals in there. Again, this bud box is not meant to store animals or hold animals. It's meant for animals to come into and pretty much immediately exit. So you're going to sit here and work this line, and the animals that are in here are naturally going to want to go by you and circle around you. And so once they circle around you, they're going to see this hole here, and they're going to see it as a way out and a way to get away from that pressure you're applying in this bud box. So even though you are standing at the front of the chute there, they are still going to want to circle around you and go by you, and they'll get sent through that chute. So it's really cool to play around with. It's super handy. And, before where the farm I grew up working at, before we had a bud box, it was so challenging to try and drive those animals from behind to get them to go down a chute, because that chute's usually darker, it's narrow, and they're not big fans of it. But using this bud box system is pretty slick. So another tip when using a bud box is you are not going to let any animals come behind you or along this fence line here. So you're always going to be owning this side of the fence and just working in straight lines, again, to get those animals to come around you and go down that chute, because that's where that pressure is no longer going to be. So it's pretty slick. I'd love to know if you guys use bud boxes. So another note about facilities is, you just want to make sure before you handle them, always do a walkover in your facilities, make sure there's nothing that could injure your cattle, a rusted nail or whatever, anything that might injure them, but also make sure there's really nothing that the animals might balk at. So oftentimes, this little table down here by the head gate, sometimes they can see it through the side of the fence, and that alone can often be enough to get them to balk. However, you can see there's a whole line of people here that they're going by pretty well. I think maybe they balked a little bit because of that, but we still were able to get the job done, which was great. So facilities, they don't have to be fancy. They don't necessarily have to be curved, and you don't actually need solid sided panels. You can have them, it can help, but regardless of your facilities, they should just be an aid to your low stress handling activities. Okay, so this is my last slide. These are just some take-home tips for you guys. The big things, and I'm not going to read all these off to you since, you know, they're there for you all to read, but I just want to say, you know, really stress when you put pressure on an animal, you have to provide them with some kind of release, and that is so that they know they're moving in the right direction. The more we cram on them, the more we stay in that flight zone, the more stressed they're going to be, and the more difficult it is going to be to manipulate them. And again, they're prey animals. So the second they start to get stressed, they're going to start to panic, and they're no longer really thinking anymore. You know, it's about fight or flight. And so to keep things in a low stress way, also just, that's why it helps things go smooth, is because they're able to sort of think a little bit better. And not to mention, you know, when they're stressing out, they're losing weight and they're losing condition. It's just, you know, the way it goes. So if you can keep things low stress, you know, you're going to decrease any kind of loss. And you know, they'll hopefully keep their weight on much better and improve their gains. So, and then finally, I always like to say, just observe, remember, and compare. Watch what's happening, be really thoughtful and observant with your livestock. Remember the bad times, because there are going to be them. And then, you know, change and set yourself up a different way. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and it's not working, take a minute and stop and say, how might I change this up so that I can end with success and, you know, with my animal's best interest in mind. So I think that's all I have to say for low stress handling today. So I'll stop sharing my screen. All right. Okay, great. And I don't know if you guys can unmute or not. I would welcome that, but otherwise,
Emma, I'm sorry. No, in this webinar, only you and I.
Okay.
Only you and I have the voice.
No problem. All right. So one question we got, what if you have a small mixed species group who are very friendly and familiar with you and don't generally move away from you when you approach? Yeah, that's a good one. And that definitely does make things a little bit more difficult when you start handling your livestock. And I think we see that a lot here in this area, because we have smaller herds, and oftentimes, you know, they could be halter broke, and generally their flight zone is pretty narrow, and you know, you can pretty much just push on them a little bit. So I don't have a great answer for that. If other folks have ideas, chime in, but I would say, you know, play around with maybe you know, working with them one-on-one, see what you can do to move them. You know, once you get to a point where they are really desensitized, I do sometimes wonder, you know, maybe it is just easier moving them with how you do with a bucket of grain or whatever. But that is a great question, and I don't have a perfect answer, but you can certainly play around with, you know, livening things up a little bit. You know, I don't want you to think like you have to like scare them to get them to move away from your pressure, but chances are, you know, if you do play around with this stuff, just experiment, see what gets them to move off from your pressure, and you know, maybe that will help a little bit. So let's see what we have for questions. Okay, Any good tips for moving cattle to small flight zones? Yeah, so like I said before, I would definitely experiment with some things. I mean, you could try and bring in some tools like maybe a flag or a rattler to see if that gets them to move off of pressure a little better. But again, these tools should only be an extension of you. You should not be relying on them for the sole movement of animals. So, and still apply these low stress handling techniques for getting them to move off of pressure. So how do animals enter the bud box? Okay, I actually think I want to share my screen for the, sorry, my computer, I'm using two screens, so they swap back and forth. I'm sorry if my sound changes at all. Here we go. All right, so I'm just going to pop it back on this screen. So how do they enter the bud box? Let me play it actually. So they're going to enter the bud box by coming in. Usually they're going to be in a holding pen. So like out here, or maybe in here. It actually looks like in this diagram, this would be maybe the holding pen. But for example, in this situation, so I mentioned off here, I wish I had a better photo of this. This is our bud box. And then on either side of it, there is a holding pen where they can stay. So usually they're coming in from a holding pen into the bud box. And so if you can set up your facilities in a way that it kind of flows in a circle so that they're coming back to where they came from, again, using that natural instinct, that can get things to flow a little better. Again, you know, that's not necessarily how this facility is set up. It still works, but in general, they're coming from a holding pen over here. It's kind of like the bud box is in the middle of two holding pens. And so they come in from a holding pen into the bud box, and then you work that fence line, they turn and head through the chute. They leave the chute, and sometimes they get kicked into the field, or there's another holding pen they get into, so that we know, you know, those are the ones that have been vaccinated or doctored or whatever are separated from the ones that have not been. So I hope that helps answer that question a little bit better. And if I didn't, feel free to clarify it all. So I have a small herd of cows. Blind spot, yeah, does not seem to apply. So same situation. Yeah, I would welcome anybody else have any tips with this. Has anybody else found success? That's my one downfall is in my personal experience, I've mostly handled cattle that have a pretty big and sheep that have a pretty big flight zone. So it definitely is more challenging when that flight zone gets smaller. I do get the animal into the adjacent corral trying to get is also difficult. Yeah, so again, if you can get, I would almost practice this stuff in a pen. If you have just like a corral or something, and just try moving them all as a herd. You have no real goal in mind. The goal is to just get them moving off of your pressure. And again, maybe it's a matter of using some tools. But sometimes the cattle, even if say they're in a chute and you do the thing where you walk head to tail by them quickly, like right up against the fence, and they still don't go forward into the head gate, we'll sometimes rub them on top of the head, like scrub their head a little bit. And sometimes they don't like that. Sometimes they love it. And they'll either like go past you, or sometimes you can just tap them on the tail head and see if that works. But Yeah, oops, so a good view of the bud box setup. Yeah, Kurt, Pate, and Ron Gill. Ron Gill is a Texas Extension specialist. He does a lot of this kind of stuff too. So that's a great video. I think I have that in my PowerPoint. So thanks for sharing it, Damon. There's only so many videos I can do at a time, right? So yeah, does anybody else have anything to add or ideas for moving animals with small flight zones? So Emma said, I often use a stick, which makes my body seem larger, and use really slow, steady pressure, often using the help of a more skittish animal to lead. Yeah, so sometimes we want that confident animal in front that knows where it's going, but other times use the animal that is the most sensitive to your advantage when moving your whole herd. And yeah, so a stick, anything that you can do to sort of change your presence around your animals might help them move off of your pressure a little bit better as well. And again, sometimes it is an experiment, and especially with the ones that are a little bit more dull. All right, I think I answered all the questions. And we still have some time, but I know it's a nice day out, so I don't want to keep.
Elaina, there was one question in the Q&A, and I'm not sure if you answered it about.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I'm going to say I answered live so that it goes away. But again, if I wasn't clear, I'll type in on some of those questions. I'd be happy to talk about some of this stuff more. I love talking about low stress handling, learning from others and practicing it. So if you ever want to play around with it, give me a call. If you're a farm in New Hampshire and we can talk about it some, or if you have questions, let me know. And I definitely have quite a few resources out there, and there are a ton of resources for sure. So I'll actually look into a bit about animals with a smaller flight zone and see if there's anything else out there that I might be overlooking to try and help folks with that. And Michelle, is there a way to send information to people after?
So what you can do is you can send it to me, and then when I send the link to everyone, I can send that with it.
Perfect.
If that works.
Good, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Elaina.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you all for being here. I do wish I could see your faces, but definitely, my email is in the chat, and don't hesitate to reach out. So this was great, and enjoy this nice weather, everyone.
And before you go, just put on your calendar, next week we're going to have grain-free Jerry. So make sure you sign up for that. It's at the Winter Learning Series on Facebook. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.